Hello everyone, FSG here, hope you're all doing well, we're back! But this time we are on Hutan Tai for a little bit of testing. We are going to give ground deformation a bit of a test and see what we can find out. See just how much difference it makes based on the tractor, different tyres, different weights of vehicles, and just try and share that information with you. So, we have got ourselves a cultivated field here. I thought it was probably one of the best textures to show off the ground def. The lighting is good, we're early in the morning, and we have got a large selection of vehicles here to run through. So first and foremost, we are going for a small Z-Tour with relatively narrow tyres, and then we are going to look at the case with slightly bigger wheels. We're going to then use the T7, which is almost identical to the case in terms of a tractor, but with a very heavy cultivator on the back of it, to see if that makes a difference in the weight of the tyres on the ground. Then we've got the 8RX with narrow tracks, and then we have got the 715 with some large tracks on it as well. So we'll run those, we'll run them up to a point into the field, and then we'll go back and analyse it. Then we have got the same tractor times 3, one with regular wheels, one with wide wheels and weights, and then one with duals, and we'll see how they go and see if there's any difference between the three. And then finally we have got some heavy beasts. We've got the Agrifax sprayer here, which before you fill it up is already 14.7 tons. We added a full tank of liquid fertilizer to that as well. And then we have got the CR11 from New Holland, one with tracks and one with dual wheels. Now the tracked version is ever so slightly lighter at 25.6 tons, and with the wheels it's 25.9 tons. So some heavy beasts there. So we're going to try all these, we're going to run them to a point, then we're going to switch the rain on, and we're going to run them back, and we're going to see if there's a difference in the tracks. So let's jump into our first tractor and see how we get on. So test number 1, it is the Z-Tour. And here we go, we are going to roll forward, going to get to a point somewhere, I don't know, this should do it, and we're going to jump out, and let's analyse that track. There is a little bit of deformation there, not much though, it's a relatively lightweight tractor, and we have got some of the tyre tracks in there, but you can see very subtle deformation there, so that is looking good. And then let's jump straight into the case. Let's see what we get with this. So with the case, obviously a bigger tractor, wider tyres, and more weight. We're going to run it to roughly the same point here. We're going to jump out again. There you go. Now that is looking, I would say, similar in terms of compression. Obviously the tyres are wider, but in general, that doesn't look a million miles away from what we're seeing with the Z-Tour in terms of depth. If I look at this element here, and I look at something like this element here, that looks relatively similar. So that is interesting. Now, let's try what is in essence the same tractor in real life. Weight-wise, they are identical, but we have got a 4.7 ton power harrow behind us. As you can see with this, if I lift this off the ground, the front wheels are barely making contact with the ground. Look, they are almost floating. So even at this point, if I roll forward and then roll back, the weight on the field there is almost identical to what we're seeing with the case. But I'm expecting the rear wheels to be a lot deeper into the ground. So let's roll this forward. Roll it to a point. I can barely steer with this because the front wheels are so high off the ground. So there we go, let's roll this to this point and look behind us. Now I'm jumping out here. We are seeing more depth, not massively. I would say there's ever so slightly more, but it's not hugely deep there. Is it deeper? I would say it is. There's a more of a consistent edge to the ridge there, where there isn't on this one. So it's definitely deeper, but not drastically. You can see more of a mound in the middle there. I would expect that to have gone deeper than it has, but that's not bad. That's not bad. Remember, this ground is dry, however. And we'll come back and we'll do something else with that when we get it wet. But next up, John Deere with the tracks. Now, I'm interested about this one because obviously we know the reason we have tractors is because they dissipate the weight more than a wheel. The contact point with the ground is spread out more. And that looks to be representative on the tracks here as well. That definitely looks, even more than the Zetor with its tyres, looks to be less deep. Definitely. Looks almost more like a pattern on the surface than any compression at all. Now, last of the tractors on their own, and it is again a big one. The 715. So, let's roll this forward and see what happens with this. So we'll just get to the point. I think we're going to see the same similar idea here. So if we jump out there, although the tracks are wider, they are definitely not sinking into the ground like they would be with the tyres. So there you go, first impressions. Not much deformation, not as much as we saw. If you remember back to the test build that I did when we were in Chicago, it was a lot more pronounced than this. This is more subtle and I think more realistic. I'm liking this. I'm liking this so far. Next up, we're going to do our 3 Masseys. So the new, absolutely beautiful, probably one of my favourite tractors so far I've seen in 25, the old 9S. So let's get into this. Let's roll these to a point as well. And we will stop. So I expect similar results with this one as I saw with the Case and the T7 New Holland. There's a bit of deformation there. You can see a defined ridge in the middle, and so they're definitely sinking into the ground a little bit more. It is a heavy tractor. Now we've got the wide wheels with the weights on the back. So obviously a little bit heavier, but not drastically different. And I expect we'll see not masses of difference here between these two tractors. So there we go. Let's do that. Jump out for a second. And again, we've got the wider tyres on, but we aren't seeing much of a difference in weight. Probably negligible in terms of how much deeper we're going there on the track, but interesting to see. Now if I go over here, probably is a little bit, it's probably less so than with the heavy implement behind it. And even the Case seems to be a little bit heavier on the ground with those narrower tyres, because the tyres are wider on these. So yeah, interesting. Actually, the light's better if you look at them from over here. You get a better impression of the tracks. That's interesting. Right, finally, third one of these. Let's jump in. We've got the wide tyres. Oh, the duals on as well. So this, obviously, you're spreading the weight over more of an area, but still not as good as tracks, I don't think. But again, you can see there that we are definitely not dropping into the ground as much as we are with the weighted tyres. So there you go, definitely deeper visually. Obviously they're digging in, but not as much. So they do make a difference. That is good. There's a lot of subtle differences to these, which I'm quite impressed with. So there you go, there's your tractor tests. Next up, the Agrifac. Now, there's a few things going on here. We've got probably over 15 tons of vehicle, and we've also got narrow tyres. So, let's jump in, see how we go with this. So there we go. Look at the depth of that. You can see that instantly there. With this heavy vehicle, you are really digging into the ground with this. Let's just jump out there. There you go. A lot more deeper into the ground there. Much more depth, much more pronounced. That looks good. That looks Really, really good. But you can see the difference in the weight. Amazing. Finally! Biggest of the lot, and this is going to be an interesting one. Do the tracks, on something as heavy as this, do the tracks make a difference compared to tyres and wheels? Let's find out. So CR11, we are playing in a 25.6 tonne vehicle now, so let's see how much it spreads the weight of this massive vehicle using the tracks. So there we go. With the tracks, yeah, that's definitely, interestingly, not as deep into the ground as the Agrifac. Definitely not as deep. Which is interesting because it's heavier. It's definitely heavier. And let's do the same with the wheeled version. Now, we don't have full hopper in these, but definitely still enough weight in these to test how the deformable ground is going to work. So there we go. We'll jump out here. Let's have a look. Again, it is spread pretty wide. That is not as deep as the sprayer, so definitely the wider tyres are helping as well here. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of deformation there though compared to some of the lighter vehicles. So there you go, first tests done in the dry, and there are the results. Now let's turn the rain on. Right, there we go. It hasn't been raining for long, so we're going to give it a little bit of time just to set itself. We've also lost our light a little bit, so it makes the tracks not stand out as much in the ground, but we'll give it a few minutes, and then we'll come back and we will run the tests on some wet soil. Right, we have given this a little bit of time. As you can see on the clock there, we are a little bit further forward than we were before. Just before we jump in, look at the wet effect on the tyres, on the tractors, and the raindrops on the paint. It's really nicely done. It's a nice touch. There's lots of subtleties in 25 that I like. Anyway, we digress. Let's see. Now, we've got our previous here. We've got our pre-rain tracks. So let's see what it looks like now with rain. Do they sink deeper into the ground? Let's find out. So there we go with the Z-Tour. Of course, we've got mud on it as well straight away. Did you see when it stopped as well? That front wheel just dropped into the ground a little bit more. So there we go. Tracks, let's see if we can get to the other one. We've, like I said before, we've lost our sun a bit, so we've lost some of the detail. But if we turn around here, there is our track before. And as you can see, no ridges. But afterwards, I think I can see a little bit more of a pronounced ridge here. This is where the wet deformation went. And it definitely looks different, doesn't it? I'm not kidding myself here. That is definitely deeper than it was before. Let's try the case as well. See if we can see any discernible difference in this. This is quite a good one because it didn't sink into the ground massively before. As we roll forward here, already I'm seeing it being deeper, for sure. Let's roll up to a stop here. That was an instant spot there. And again, the other thing to worth looking at here, look at the mud on the tyres. That didn't happen before. That's so cool. That is so cool. Again, it doesn't, looking in this direction, it doesn't seem to show up as much as if we look back on ourselves as well. So let's just do that. So there we go, pre-rain here. I mean, there's a bit of depth there. But then, when you roll over here, I do think you've got a more pronounced... It's not overly, but it's definitely more pronounced. You can see the raised edges on either side just a little bit more. But it's all subtle. There's nothing like drastically deeper there. It just is a subtle difference. I do love that mud on the tyres though. That is brilliant. That sheds as well when you go onto a road, which is very cool. I wasn't even thinking about showing you the mud on the tyres, but I just spotted it there. So, right, let's try the T7 now with this very heavy implement on the back, because I think we might see some results here. Let's give this a go. So obviously it's raised, we don't have it in the ground, and we are really struggling to steer this, by the way. But there we go. Let's grind to a stop here. Let's have a look at this. Again, it's not massively different, is it? It's not massively different. Just as a reminder, there's our before again. Let's turn around so you can see it. There's our before just here, and then as we walk forward, again, subtle. But I do think it's a little bit deeper. That ridge in the middle is definitely more pronounced now, isn't it? So the tyres are further into the ground. Definitely. Right. The 8RX with the tracks. Of course, before, these really didn't make much of an impact on the ground. So it will be interesting to see what kind of a difference we get here. There we go, a wider track with this one. Before and after. I'll be honest, this is probably the first one where I'm struggling to see any pronounced difference. That looks almost identical to it did in the dry. Interesting. Also, no mud on the tyres there as well. Right, let's try the quad track before we move on to the Masseys. Right, we'll roll up to the John Deere here. There we go. And jump out. Again, maybe ever so slightly, but then again, maybe not. Let's get to where we started before. So this is pre-rain, and then we're into post-rain here. Again, maybe if it is different, it is incredibly subtle. I can barely see a difference on that one with the tracks. The tyres, definitely. They have definitely changed. These ones, not so much. Not so much, but again, maybe that is, again, I don't have the knowledge of this. Maybe that dissipation of the weight is a benefit on wet ground as well. Right. 9S time. Let's see what we do with these three. We'll roll forward to the point. Of course, again, they do sink in deeper than the tracks, being the tyres. Let's just roll it up to the same point. And again, I expect to see, similar to what we saw with the T7 and the case earlier on, a subtle change, maybe ever so slightly deeper, but not drastically. There's our before state. So you can see the ridge lines may be ever so slightly shallower than when you get them a little bit further down when we're into the muddy state. Let's do the same again with the wheel weights and the wide tyres. There we go. Jump out here. Started to see a trend here. I think everything is maybe ever so slightly deeper, but nothing you would write home about. It almost feels like there isn't like there isn't a limit to the depth at the moment, which is nice because, again, like I said, when I played in Chicago, when I was over there, you kind of got to the bottom. You probably got to the bottom of the depth of it very quickly. Yeah, that's what we could do. There's a bit of sun. Might might change the weather once we're done here and see if we can see the difference. But there we go. Again, with joules, that mud looks fantastic. Very subtle difference with those as well, compared to what we had before. Negligible, I would say, the differences on those. Does look better with the sun out, doesn't it? Right, finally, the big beasts, the Agrifac. Heavy with the rain. Let's zoom out and see if you can actually see this straight away, if there's a difference. Now, I think I can straight away see a difference there. We are deeper into the ground. I think it's struggling a little bit more to move along as well. That is very much more pronounced, that depth. I think that's probably the best example we've seen so far with the weight. How much deeper that was. It was deep before, but it was very deep then, wasn't it? Let's go back. So that was the point I thought, yes, that's definitely a lot deeper. In fact, you can see, look at the depth of that there compared to the depth there. It is a lot shallower there, so that is a pronounced difference. That's probably the most stark contrast that we've seen on all of those. And then finally, our two combines. Let's have a look at those. So, first of all, with tracks. Again, let's zoom out. That was not a bad test, that zooming out. And again, yes, subtle. It's definitely a bit deeper, but not drastically. And of course, you're not going to be driving a combine in a wet field anyway, are you? So, just a good example of how it works. And then finally, let's do our tired tractor over here, tired combine over here. And finally, let's do our tired combine over here. Right, here we go. Again, watch. You see some of the before and some of the after. We're definitely a little bit deeper into the ground. So, I think, in summary, we're saying that there is definitely a difference between when it's raining and when it's dry. There is absolutely a difference between tracked and tired tractors. And there is absolutely a difference between the width of the tyres that you use as well, with the skinnier ones digging in a lot more. Weight as well has an impact. So the wide tyres with the weights there, and then there's the regular tyres. I mean, it's similar. What I would say is this is subtle. It isn't over the top. I've been very vocal when it comes to people saying we want SnowRunner type mud in the game, because I think that's too extreme. This is good. This works from a ground deformation perspective, and it's a start point, right? We'll move on from this, we'll develop this will continue to improve, but I think it's a fantastic addition to the game. And just finally, before we finish this vid, I thought this overhead view might be quite interesting for you to see the differences. Again, it's quite a good way of showing how pronounced the depth is on some of these, and as you can see, there's a lot of variety in there. There's our dual tired CR11, there is our tracked CR11, there is the Agrifac with the narrow tyres, there is the Massy with the joules, the Massy with wide tyres but weights, Massy with regular tyres but with no weights. Interestingly, that looks slightly deeper. I think that might be a tyre width thing. The quad track, which is probably the heaviest tractor, and will be the heaviest tractor of all of them, makes one of the least impacts, as does the 8RX. And then we're into the tractors with tyres. That is the T7 with the very heavy implement behind it. That is the case, and that is the small Zetor. So there you go. That is a little bit of a test of ground deformation in FS25 across a range of different equipment. Some heavy, some light, some small, some large, some with implements, some without, some with different tyre setups. I'm sure other people will do a lot of tests on these and come up with some interesting stuff as well. But for me, as a start for 10 and an improvement in FS compared to 22, this is a big step forward. Let's not deny it. This is something the community has been asking for a very long time, and we finally got it, and I for one think it's been implemented very, very well. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.